Welcome back, I am the Atomic Pun, and this is your two-headed giant guide for Duskmourn Limited. Here I will be going over all of the cards that play differently in two-headed giant compared to 1v1 limited formats, so you can get an edge over the competition. A quick note on two-headed giant, I will not be going over the comprehensive rules differences as plenty of other YouTubers have already done so. If you're looking for that, I suggest the Tolarian Community College video linked in the description. So without further ado, let's get into the cards. I want to look at the commons and uncommons first, since you're more likely to see them than any given bomb rare. These first three I think are going to make the most impact due to their low cost and ease of use. Osseous Stick Twister, Baelmerk Leech, and Grab the Prize. All three of these cost 2 mana and can make a serious difference in the game. You'll notice they are in red and black, which are the two colors that have the most each opponent or each player abilities. So look to build around at least one of these colors in your deck, and try to have them both represented between you and your partner. Osseous Stick Twister does give your opponents choices, but the choices are doubly bad in two-headed giant. I would wait to cast this until you have Delirium online, as it forces your opponents to answer it on the turn it's played. At the beginning of your end step, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, each opponent may sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. Then Osseous Stick Twister deals damage equal to its power to each opponent who didn't sacrifice a permanent or discard a card this way. And with its lifelink ability, you'll be gaining life if they choose to take the damage. That's some combination of potentially 2 permanents off the board, 2 cards out of their hands, or an 8 damage swing in your favor for just 2 mana. Baelmerk Leech as a 2/2 for 2 is a fine early game play that will quickly start draining your opponent's life in the right deck. Whenever an enchantment you control enters and whenever you fully unlock a room, each opponent loses 1 life. With 77 enchantments in this set and 44 of them at uncommon or common, it shouldn't be hard to build a deck with a critical mass of enchantments and rooms. Given that this is a common, you may be able to build around 2 or 3 of these and watch your opponents lose 2 life every time Eerie is triggered. Grab the Prize does something that you frequently want to be doing in Limited, which is filtering cards. This card would be included in most red decks just for the discard 1, draw 2 ability, but adding 4 total damage to your opponent takes this over the top. Yes, you have to discard a non-land card to trigger the damage, but if you're trying to hit Delirium, this can actually help your game plan. If you're running red, I would play as many of these as I open. I'll next mention Shroud Stomper, as its ability is fantastic in two-headed giant, but its mana cost will probably keep it from making a major impact in most games. For 7 total mana, you get a 5/5 Death Touch that gives you a card and drains your opponents for 4 life while giving you 2 every time it enters and attacks. A 6 life swing plus a card on a 5/5 Death Touch is excellent, but getting to 7 mana will be the issue. Similarly, we have Vile Mutilator, a 7 mana 6/5 Flying Trample is a good uncommon for Limited, even if you have to sack a creature or enchantment to cast it. Boards get gummed up quickly in two-headed giant, so it's likely you have an early creature sitting on the board that you can sack without making an impact. When this enters, it can potentially take 2 non-token enchantments and 2 non-token creatures off your opponent's side of the board, making this a potential 4 for 2. Also in the high mana uncommons, we have Fear of Burning Alive, a 6 mana 4/4 that's going to deal 8 damage to your opponents on entry, and if you have Delirium, 4 damage to up to 2 creatures. Delirium shouldn't be hard to get by turn 6 if that's the kind of deck you're building, but a decent body attached to 8 face damage could make the difference on its own. Delirium does seem to be a good mechanic to build around in this set, and if you are, a great include would be the 4 mana black sorcery, Let's Play a Game. With Delirium, you can give all your opponent's creatures -1/-1, as well as taking them down 4 cards and having them lose 6 while you gain 3. That's a lot of value, especially if you can cast it on turn 4 or 5, and get them to discard some high mana bombs sitting in their hands. Our first room on this list is Glassworks/Shattered Yard. The Shattered Yard side costs 5 mana and will be doing 2 damage to your opponent on each of your end steps. While that's a lot of mana investment, it is a nice passive way to keep your opponent's life total going down. It also works well with the next card. Intruding Soul Rager is a red and blue 2/2 for 2 with Vigilance that can tap and sack a room to deal 4 damage to your opponents and draw a card. I wouldn't build around this card necessarily, but it would be a good include if you're running a lot of rooms. With 2 rooms on the field, you could sack one at their end step and sack another at your upkeep to take them from 8 to 0. The last of the commons and uncommons to discuss would be Arabella Abandoned Doll, a legendary red and white 1/3 for 2. When it attacks, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures you control with power 2 or less. Successfully attacking with a 1/3 is difficult, but if you're playing a lot of small creatures or manifesting dread frequently, attacking with this just once could be a game ender. From my review of the rares and mythics, I don't see any bombs that you would want to play in Two-Headed Giant that aren't also bombs in 1v1 Limited, so I'll go through them fairly quickly. Abhorrent Oculus manifests dread on each opponent's upkeep. Because of that wording, you will get to manifest dread twice on each opponent's upkeep. Even though they share an upkeep, you still have 2 opponents, which is why it triggers twice. Funeral Room and Unholy Annex are the low-cost sides of 2 black room cards that can drain your opponents and gain you life. The loss of life will of course be doubled given that you have 2 opponents. Razorkin Needlehead will run away with the game fast if not dealt with quickly, as each draw step will take 2 life from your opponent. There are a few ways to force your opponents to draw extra cards in this set, including Winter, Misanthropic Guide, which has every player draw 2 cards at your upkeep, as well as Friendly Teddy, which will cause all players to draw a card when it dies. Victor Valgavoth Seneschal is a 3-mana 3/3, and when you trigger Eerie for the 2nd time each turn, it will force each opponent to discard a card. While getting your opponents to go down 2 cards is great, I imagine triggering Eerie twice on multiple turns will be hard to do consistently. So those are all the cards that I think will make an impact on Two-Headed Giant Limited. Here are some cards to watch out for and some rules interactions to be aware of. Fanatic of the Harrowing is a 2/2 creature for 4, and when it enters, each player discards a card. If you discarded a card this way, you draw a card. Be aware that this will also force your teammate to discard, though they do not get the benefit of drawing a card, as the word "you" refers only to the controller of the spell and does not include their teammates. Derelict Attic / Widow's Walk is a room that has an ability that triggers when a creature you control attacks alone. Know that if your teammate also attacks with any creatures, your creature will no longer be attacking alone, so it will not get the +1/+0 and Death Touch. Also, your teammate cannot trigger this ability as it has to be a creature you control and you do not control your teammate's creatures. Fear of the Dark is a 5/5 for 5 that gains Menace and Death Touch if the defending player controls no glimmers. While any opponent can block your attacking creature, you're technically still only attacking one player. This rarely makes a difference in combat, but with this creature, you would want to specifically name a player if one of them does not control any glimmers so you can gain the abilities. Screaming Nemesis and Grievous Wound are 2 cards that specify that a player can't gain life. Be aware that the other player on your opponent's team can still gain life, as life gain and loss happen to a player first and then changes the team's shared life total. Thanks for watching my breakdown of Two-Headed Giant for Duskmourn Limited. If you found this helpful, please throw me a like and consider subscribing. I also do daily pack opening shorts where you can try to guess the value of tomorrow's pack, and I'll send you a free pack if you get it right. I am the Atomic Pun, and I have no sign-off.